this Leader of the Opposition, a former Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Speaker. So he spent most of his time prosecuting journalists and failing to prosecute Jimmy Savile, as far as I can make out, Mr. Speaker.
I tell you, I don't think it's quite appropriate with what I'm going to say. You ought to be ashamed. I really do. Before we move on to the first statement, I would like to assure the House, following the comments made at the start of questions, that there will be an opportunity to pay tribute to our friend and colleague, the late Jack Dromey. And that will take place on Wednesday. I'm sure honourable and right honourable members will welcome the opportunity to pay tribute at that point. I should inform the House that, given the brief period of time available to review the report, I shall be allowing the leaders of the opposition a little longer to question the Prime Minister than is usually the case, and I'm sure the Prime Minister may wish a little longer as well at the beginning. I now come to the statement. Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I would like to make a statement. And first, I want to express my deepest gratitude to Sue Gray and all the people who have contributed to this report, which I have placed in the library of this House and which the Government has published in full today for everyone to read. I will address its findings in this statement, but firstly I want to say sorry. And I'm sorry for the things we simply didn't get right, and also sorry for the way that this matter has been handled. And it's no use saying that this or that was within the rules, and it's no use saying that people were working hard. This pandemic was hard for everyone. We asked people across this country to make the most extraordinary sacrifices, not to meet loved ones, not to visit relatives before they died. And I understand the anger that people feel. But, Mr. Speaker, it isn't enough to say sorry. This is a moment when we must look at ourselves in the mirror and we must learn. And while the Metropolitan Police must yet complete their investigation, and that means there are no details of specific events in Sue Gray's report, I, of course, accept Sue Gray's general findings in full. And above all, her recommendation that we must learn from these events and act now. With respect to the events under police investigation, she says, and I quote, "No conclusions should be drawn or inferences made from this other than it is now for the police to consider the relevant material in relation to those incidents." But more broadly, she finds that there is significant learning to be drawn from these events, which must be addressed immediately across government. This does not need to wait for the police investigations to be concluded. That is why we are making changes now to the way Downing Street and the Cabinet Office run, so that we can get on with the job that I was elected to do, Mr. Speaker, and the job that this government was elected to do. First, it is time to sort out what Sue Gray rightly calls the fragmented and complicated leadership structures of Downing Street, which she says have not evolved sufficiently to meet the demands of the expansion of Number 10. And we will do that, including by creating an Office of the Prime Minister with a permanent secretary to lead Number 10. Second, Mr. Speaker, it is clear from Sue Gray's report that it is time not just to review the Civil Service and Special Advisor codes of conduct wherever necessary to ensure that they take account of Sue Gray's recommendations, but also to make sure that those codes are properly enforced. And third, I will be saying more in the coming days about the steps we will take to improve the Number 10 operation and the work of the Cabinet Office, to strengthen Cabinet government, and to improve the vital connection between Number 10 and Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I get it and I will fix it. And I want to say to the people of this country, I know what the issue is. Yes, Mr. Speaker, yes. It's whether this government can be trusted to deliver. And I say, Mr. Speaker, yes, we can be trusted. Yes, we can be trusted to deliver. We said that we would get Brexit done, Mr. Speaker, and we did. And we're setting up free ports around the whole United Kingdom. I've been to one of them today, which is creating tens of thousands of new jobs, Mr. Speaker. We said we would get this country through COVID, and we did. We delivered the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe and the fastest booster programme of any major economy, so that we've been able to restore people's freedoms faster than any comparable economy. And at the same time, we've been cutting crime by 14%, building 40 new hospitals and rolling out gigabit broadband, Mr. Speaker, and delivering all the promises of our 2019 agenda so that we have the fastest economic growth of the G7. We have shown that we have done things that people thought were impossible, Mr. Speaker, and that we can deliver for the British people. Mr. Speaker, I remind the benches opposite. The reason we're coming out of COVID so fast is at least partly because we doubled the speed of the booster rollout. And I can tell the House and this country that we are going to bring the same energy and commitment to getting on with the job, to delivering for the British people, and to our mission to unite and level up across this country, Mr. Speaker, and I commend this statement to the House.
I now call Keir Starmer, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank Sue Gray for the diligence and professionalism with which she's carried out her work. It's no fault of hers that she's only been able to produce an update today, not the full report. The Prime Minister repeatedly assured the House that the guidance was followed and the rules were followed. But we now know that 12 cases have reached the threshold for criminal investigation, which I remind the House means that there is evidence of serious and flagrant breaches of lockdown, including the party on the 20th of May 2020, which we know the Prime Minister attended, and the party on the 13th of November 2020 in the Prime Minister's flat. There can be no doubt that the Prime Minister himself is now subject to criminal investigation. The Prime Minister must keep his promise to publish Sue Gray's report in full when it is available, but it is already clear that the report discloses the most damning conclusion possible. Over the last 2 years, the British public have been asked to make the most heart-wrenching sacrifices, a collective trauma, endured by all, enjoyed by none. Funerals have been missed, dying relatives unvisited. Every family has been marked by what we've been through. And revelations about the Prime Minister's behaviour have forced us all to rethink and relive those darkest moments. Many have been overcome by rage, by grief, and even guilt. Guilt that because they stuck to the law, they did not see their parents one last time. Guilt that because they didn't bend the rules, their children went months without seeing friends. Guilt that because they did as they were asked, they didn't go and visit lonely relatives. But people shouldn't feel guilty. They should feel pride in themselves and their country, because by abiding by those rules, they've saved the lives of people they will probably never meet. They have shown the deep public spirit and the love and respect for others that has always characterised this nation at its best. Our national story about COVID is one of a people that stood up when they were tested. But that will be forever tainted by the behaviour of this Conservative Prime Minister. By routinely breaking the rules he set, the Prime Minister took us all for fools. He held people sacrificing contempt. He showed himself unfit for office. His desperate denials since he was exposed have only made matters worse. Rather than come clean, every step of the way, he's insulted the public's intelligence. And now he's finally fallen back on his usual excuse. It's everybody's fault but his. They go, he stays. Even now, he is hiding behind a police investigation into criminality, into his home and his office. Mr. Speaker, he gleefully treats what should be a mark of shame as a welcome shield. But, Prime Minister, the British public aren't fools. They never believed a word of it. They think the Prime Minister should do the decent thing and resign. Of course he won't, because he is a man without shame. And just as he has done throughout his life, he's damaged everyone and everything around him along the way. His colleagues have spent weeks defending the indefensible, touring the TV studios, parroting his absurd denials, degrading themselves and their offices, fraying the bond of trust between the government...
Order. The member for South Ribble is my neighbour. I expect better from my neighbours. Keir Starmer.
Fraying the bond of trust between the government and the public, eroding our democracy and the rule of law. Margaret Thatcher once said, "The first duty of government is to uphold the law. If it tries to bob and weave and duck around that duty when it's inconvenient, then so will the governed." Mr. Speaker, to govern this country is an honour, not a birthright. It is an act of service to the British people, not the keys to a court to parade to your friends. It requires honesty, integrity and moral authority. I can't tell you how many times people have said to me that this Prime Minister's lack of integrity is somehow priced in, that his behaviour and character don't matter. I have never accepted that, and I never will accept that. Whatever your politics, whichever party you vote for, honesty and decency matters. Our great democracy depends on it, and cherishing and nurturing British democracy is what it means to be patriotic. There are members opposite who know that, and they know the Prime Minister is incapable of it. The question they must now ask themselves is, what are they going to do about it? They can heap their reputations, the reputation of their party, the reputation of this country on the bonfire that is his leadership, or they can spare the country from a Prime Minister totally unworthy of his responsibilities. It is their duty to do so. They know better than anyone how unsuitable he is for high office. Many of them knew in their hearts that we would inevitably come to this one day. And they know that as night follows day, continuing his leadership will mean further misconduct, cover-up and deceit. It is only they that can end this farce. The eyes of the country are upon them. They will be judged by the decisions they take now.
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there's a reason why he said absolutely nothing about the report that was presented by this government and later put in the library of the House earlier on today. That is because, Mr. Speaker, the report does absolutely nothing to substantiate the tissue of nonsense he has just spoken. Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Instead, Mr. Speaker, this leader of the opposition, a former Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Speaker, he spent most of his time prosecuting journalists and failing to prosecute Jimmy Savile, as far as I can make out, Mr. Speaker. He, Mr. Speaker, chose to use this moment. He used this moment, Mr. Speaker, continually to prejudge a police inquiry. That's what he chose to do. He's reached his conclusions about it. I'm not going to reach any conclusions, and he would be entirely...